these abuse situations, but you gotta imagine before cloning in like the 40s and 50s they kind of perfected it. In the 30s they began to develop it. Surprisingly, I'm not as nervous for this one. Yeah, this probably has to be done. I can't really keep going without making it known. Although I'm at risk, and I'm at an increased risk for talking about it, but I'm already like literally medically, physically at risk. So the two just don't add up. I'm gonna live in suffering until I die, basically, without being able to do anything, enjoy anything. And I'm not talking about the joy of, partying or something, but just being regularly physical. Literally, like, just that would be enough. But as well, reaching potential in different means, different ways. As far as having the time and opportunity to explore potential in ways that others, kind of take for granted. It's not really about that though. It's about the fact that if I'm like, this messed up kind of from what I've been through, and it's not really, I'm not mentally messed up. It's just, there's been a time where I had, because of shoulder surgery that I had before that, shoulder surgery. There was a time in one of these events that somebody literally went like this around my arm and ripped my shoulder out. And so there's torture that actually, goes on. And the point is, it's supposed to be in clone bodies, but in 2010, my original body was destroyed. And so that's pretty much the basis for this, as well as why this is coming out. But they're also going to use this as a way to kind of prolong and give benefit to themselves as far as cloning and technological immortality. But they could literally be holding off with big magnetic shields, the hive and the AI, which if they stopped holding it off, I would hate life, because I'd have 1,000, probably 100,000 people who rape and molest people in my head, because we're all connected to a hive, and it's basically, they're turned off for me right now to pretend that it's like it's safe for everyone and whatnot, when that might not be the case. It might even be far, far worse than just having a hive mind connection to subhumans. And part of their plan is to introduce everyone to the point where then you have a few million people in there, and if the majority of them are not rapists and murderers, then it might balance that out, and those rapists and murderers wouldn't be in power. I'm not one to say though, but that's part of why, how this could be used and why it's being played this way, because everything has multiple angles of use, and it's like a big manufactured system. So it's all about elite bloodline ritual abuse, presidents, celebrities, politicians. I'm going to read off of this post because it's kind of hard to ad-lib and speak from the heart on these issues. So they're all involved. It's a ritual, trauma-based torture, mind control, and sexual abuse, sacrificial ritual, and hypnosis. I was killed in 2010. My original body was with a gunshot to the head. The original body was destroyed, and I was placed into a clone body permanently. And so then they'll also expand on each one, I guess, each point. So it's largely done through cloning these abuse situations, but you gotta imagine before cloning in the 40s and 50s they kind of perfected it. In the 30s they began to develop it. It was just people, they would just kidnap people. So the fact that it's cloning, that I can talk about the majority of the time, that it doesn't really change it, and it really doesn't really change it, because what's the difference between getting a clone, whether the clone is a clever replication and it's just a copy that is so good it thinks it's the actual person, and you can take the memories of that being in a, you know, through the brain chip in a computer system and insert it into the mind of the original body through scalar technology. If that's not, you know, doesn't need the brain chip, well then what is the point? They're still torturing people using this technology. You know, maybe they're giving it to the population in order to kind of bring light to it, whereas it wouldn't even happen before. But maybe the problem between that is that even if it didn't get sent before to people, well, the very fact that it's in the DNA of people shows that something is happening or going on as far as basically spiritual degradation. And so I was told at that point that I was genetically engineered. I feel that's a twisting of the truth, that the body I'm in now is genetically engineered as a clone, and the ones that are put in operation are clones. They're genetically engineered. They can do a lot. You know, they basically don't die very easily. Although usually these operations are, you know, amped up, and then there's a quick upkeep to the point where you can be replaced. Apparently out here, they have to be replaced fairly regularly. Part of what they told me is that everyone in public, all those, you know, celebrities and politicians, they're switched out every few weeks. That's why they go from like old to young within a matter of like weeks and months. You know, I even do it sometimes. And so this is basically to stem a bloodline to the point where now if I pass on genes, they'll be part of the elite bloodline that they mixed me with, and all the other operatives. We're all basically marked by them, their blood. That might even be the mark, part of the mark of the beast, if you will. That it's a spiritually degraded bloodline. They also do that to exterminate or like terminate bloodlines from the earth, to the point where that soul group can no longer have any access to this realm and this civilization ever again. I feel like the end result of that so much is that there's only one consciousness soul group, and that's basically that AI Luciferian hive mind, and literally that's the taking of Earth. And so I was forced to participate in sacrifices and rituals, and this is after 20-30 years of militarization, mind control, and outright war, which involved everything from high-intensity battles to what can be identified as murder in any other situation, using advanced technology and weaponry that can destroy a person's mind and body very easily. There's basically scalar technology that can create sound wave claps or heat and kinetic pressure explosions and you know, rip a person's body apart. And then same thing, very, very weak waves, ELF, stuff like that, can make the mind go from emotional spectrum to emotional spectrum to the point where a computer can do it, like a subwoofer is moving, and the person's mind will literally turn to mush as a result of that. And so many of the operatives were used in these murder trains that would travel areas using advanced technology. They could move around instantly, basically a type of teleportation system. You know, without the witchcraft of Harry Potter is weird enough, but without like the softness of that story, it's like the train in there that could move through dimensions. And so these buses, UFO things that can bounce around from place to place, time to time, and carry operatives that are mind controlled, just blank minded. You know, there's no like, hey, what did you do last night? You know, it's literally just staring straight ahead, blank minded, and then they're put into operation. And they assassinate people. They assassinate wealthy individuals that are no longer of any use, or who are not willing to align themselves with a plan. Sometimes we're told we're eliminating the bad guys, quote unquote, who were attempting to kill off humanity and take over the world. That's debatable. It's all debatable. Maybe they're telling the truth. Maybe this was the resistance. Some of this was. We were obviously taking out people who were lost it, and we're just like, all right, we're going to plant a bomb here, here, and here, and we're going to blow this side up. America's going to break in half, and we're going to go in that way. We're going to unleash these demons upon everything. And so some of it was for the benefit of humanity, but to what extent and to who and how, I don't know. We're not really given the memories to even comprehend what that is. The larger picture, no one is. I was between the ages of 9 and 13 for all of these. The majority was around the age of 9 to 11. And I was placed to a clone body and trained and conditioned for these experiences, and spent years in that state, in and out. And so I was a kid doing this, you know. I was a kid, regardless of whether I can do it now as far as the strength and the coldness. I think I have the moral development to realize that just because somebody sets you up for that and tells you it's okay, that obviously it might not be. But even then, if there was, I mean, you know, I sometimes say even then, if I knew it was for the benefit of humanity, well then I would have no problem. The point is, it's probably never for the benefit of the humanity to do stuff like that. There's always some other way, some higher civilization or situation, excuse me, as well as civilization that could handle these things versus taking matters into such a brute force manner. Maybe that's just the shitty situation we're in and how this is gone. I don't know. There are others talking about it. So were also travels to societies without the same pain and suffering, and a rescue by a civilization who did not carry the virus that seemed to cause the damnation, depravity, and murder that was being caused in the MiLAB's groups. Solar Warden is an original resistance to this, and has since been changed title and parameters slightly. Part of that change is a result of my own use as an assassin within the group, whereby my membership and clearance was used to hide the genetics of others who had obtained my genetics and operated through modified clone bodies and holographic technology to obtain access to a starship. Research James Casbolt. This is the worst of the situation. These starships are capable of housing genetics and protecting humanity in between each age and moving them. Their main goal is to gain access to these starships and either destroy them or use them for their own purposes to protect themselves and kill off the rest of humanity. These are the original starships, the light ships that are talked about in ancient texts in ancient times. So research James, they did the same thing to him. These starships apparently existed before human civilization existed and have watched over and protected human civilization the entire time. The result of hijacking these starships by these cosmic pirates, Rothschild, Rockefeller, Windsor, and the other Illuminati, elite, satanic, occult, ritual bloodlines is that they can introduce their own DNA, which when activated becomes reptiloid and mantid, amongst other kinds of greys that are, other kinds of beings like greys that are taller and fairly demonic in appearance. I was given the choice of a long and fulfilling life where no one knows of this, or a short and impactful life where the truth comes out. So basically people with a combined wealth of $600 trillion who party all day. Not really, they go through a lot of suffering and training and conditioning, but there's also a lot of partying all day and night, or all night at least. All day, and it sold out humanity. Said they would torture me until my soul is destroyed and I am no longer myself if I do speak out. Meanwhile, where one sees a soul farm, and on top of that, some of these families are part of the resistance and are organizing power, even if they're trying to just gain power themselves, because all of them are expected to try to kill one another at some point in their lives. That's how it works. They're expected to try and take each other out and gain power because they're supposed to be good at doing that. One of the things they tell me, which has happened to me as well, is that they take their children into a household and cheat that person, that individual, and then the father will set up, usually, it's a patriarchal society, the father will set up the child to be in a situation of stealing something or something like that, and then he dips out on him and leaves, and the kid has to sit there and figure out how to how to lie to these people and talk and use his cleverness and ability to deceive to get out of that situation alive. And so it's really weird. Meanwhile, in 2010, my heart was stopped as part of a 33rd degree Freemason ritual. It's not the usual version, where one sees the soul farm from the perspective of the moon with their own spiritual eyes. My sternum was broken in order to properly revive me after failed attempts, and then I went under again as a result of the stress and having been starved for approximately 2 years beforehand as a result of trauma programming and being introduced to handlers in my daily life and being placed on a high-carb regimen as part of a mind-control torture process. I was actually revived with paddles first, and then I went under again, and they put the needle in a 200-something pound, husky-looking guy, which was actually one of my rescuers, okay? Literally, that I remember years of time spent with, basically, in these rescue civilizations. Fractured my ribcage, and I can still feel the little bone spur where it is, and it hurts like hell. But basically, that's not the worst. The worst, well, I suffered an aneurysm, and there was a surgery performed where I was given the stents, little clips that wrap around the vessel to prevent further rupture. That sucks, largely. You know, that goes in and out to the point where bending, you know, doing anything crazy kind of, doing anything kind of, that's weird. Sometimes when I think about it like that, doing anything can stress it. They're both bad, but basically I developed congestive heart disease from the starvation, having these complicated bacterial infections, which means there's like multiple influences, and the stress to my heart from seeing these events, because usually you do it, and then once a person gets to a certain point, they come in and they say, all right, you're done, no more for you. And the point is that the guy will have a heart attack, and they can see on the scan of like energy that their heart, basically chakra, if you want to call it that, is beginning to collapse. And that's it's just crazy, because a lot of that is about sexual traumatization and sacrificial ritual, to the point where they have to literally just be like, yeah, I don't care, you know, whatever, that's what it is. If you sit there and care about it, and you're like, what have I done, or what are you doing, what is really going on here, and you've been in this for years because you were grown up in it, brought up and made to not care, instantly all that care hits you all at once, and it usually kills the person instantly. They just die. It literally is like a beam gun to the heart of shooting the person to death, knocks them out, kills them. And so they have to literally not give a F and not care. And that's how it was. And I didn't really do too well with that. And so, heart disease from these issues and abuses. I'm only able to move at a walking speed, and sometimes I will begin to collapse. I also have a torn tendon. That's why it's pulling on this. There's like a wire wrapped, which is going up here, which is pulling that. That's what that like pain was. I have to lean a certain way, because I'm not going in for surgery for that, because the last time I went for surgery, I'll talk about it, I woke up in surgery on my left shoulder. And this is a simple surgery. I'd almost do it myself if I had the technology. I mean, shoot, if I had regular technology, if I had their technology, you can do it while you're wide awake watching, hopefully, a documentary versus just like TV. But they can go through the skin without making a mark and stuff like that. Scalar technology, very, very complicated. Simple but advanced. So I'm only able to move at walking speed, and sometimes I'll begin to collapse and have to call an ambulance. But this is also a trap, because I've been tortured in many hospitals and doctor's office, even a dentist's office, where a ritual sex act was performed, and ritual sex act and conjuring was performed, and all but a sacrifice. The original group was Majestic 12, which was to handle all of these issues, and Magic was formed as a disinfo group, and I have suspicion that the aliens themselves are a holographic interpretation of activated DNA into a higher dimensional level, or DNA activated into a higher dimensional level, while everyone, when transferred to the Earth plane without the advanced technology, would simply appear to be humans, probably really weird humans. That's one version, that it's technology that wraps the body, activates the DNA, connects mind to mind, and people see basically these advanced holographic projections, spiritual expansions of the potential of what a person could evolve to in a million years, and it looks like that here and now. Or it's an actual transmogrification of the DNA that changes, and you turn the devices off, they go down the store to buy some gas or something, and it looks like a big alien. I've seen the reptiloids, greys, I've seen them all. I've seen everyone that's existed. But we're in these clone bodies, we're in these underground bases, there's brain chips, there's UFOs, there's generators. I've never just been sitting here and it's like you wake up, you go do something, you meet guy, alien reptoid guy, you say what's up, and you go over here, and that's it. It's usually like you get zapped over here, you're teleported, and then something here, then a fuzzy feeling goes on, you feel like you're in a dream. It's never straight up, so it might be a form of technology, or at least spiritual technology that enters into these alternate dimensions or like dream states where one can access these other realms. I don't know, but these are the possibilities that I'm displaying to you, presenting to you right now. And I kind of go into that in this next part. And so this could be incorrect, as I've seen reptiloids manufactured or genetically engineered greys and non-manufactured greys, mantids, as well as mantids or mantis-type beings, cat, lion, and elephant humanoids, genetically engineered hybrids. However, I was often being activated through many clone bodies which contain brain chips that allow for technological holographic interfaces, as well as these Teslian generator devices which can produce scalar waves that seem to interact with the mind as well as the DNA to produce some kind of holographic activation effect where reality and mental perceptions become more physical, meaning you think of a color or wind blowing and then everyone in the group that's connected in this computer system holographic generator device feels wind blowing in like purple color or something like that. So what you think is perceived is basically just like it could just be an artificial neuronal system that everyone taps into, and you're in a virtual game system, like a virtual reality simulator at the least. The point is they've merged that to actual experience and reality, and it might have an effect to the point where the brain and the DNA makes it real to some degree, or the universe does, and we're in a kind of holographic simulator anyway. I'm not really sure how far it goes, but I know at least it goes that far. So regardless of whether these beings exist surely in this physical realm, they are producing holographic and hallucinatory representations of them, and whether or not this is related to DNA or simply holographic hallucinatory technology, people can merge their DNA back and forth and, transmogrify into these beings and back into a human form. The mantids run the reptiloids, and the greys are some kind of intermediary worker that run the humans, and like they all interface with each other as far as the greys and the humans at least, meaning humans are present throughout all of this. Some people turn into these reptile things, and it's just like through this technology where there's either holographic technology making them look human. It's basically like this. They're either reptiloids, greys, and mantids that have holographic technology. And not the greys, mainly the reptoids and mantids, because the greys are just, they appear to be greys. They don't really like pretend to be humans, although they can appear, all these attached to people. But the point is, either they're humans using technology to make themselves appear alien, or they're aliens using holographic technology to make themselves appear human. And it's one or the other. I don't know which one. Because one is just pure technology, it's humans, they're humans, that's what matters. The other is, okay, they are interdimensional alien beings whose DNA literally represents this type of biology, this genetics structure, and they're using technology to appear human. So they both change, or should change, the paradigm of reality, because this technology interfaces seamlessly into a hyper-reality with your mind to the point where somebody could, I don't know, crack a beer open, pour half of it on your head, and have you drink the rest of it, and you wouldn't tell the difference between that and a real event. Now, if you've been trained, if you have out-of-body experience and knowledge of spiritual senses and things like that, you will be able to tell the difference because you are capable of operating outside the body. If you're just, this is all you do, you wake up, go to work, you have a beer off work, you do whatever, it'll trick you. It'll trick people. The majority of people will be tricked by this. That's how it works. They haven't looked into their brain and pulled apart the layers and seen how it really works and tinkered around with stuff, and so this system would trick them.
The main thing here is that the heart won't be easily tricked or won't be tricked. If a person lives close to their heart, in respect to the heart, and building a spiritual sensitivity, and heart is also, mental, emotional, physical, not just heart, mind, or body, it's all three. If a person, and maybe the Trinity isn't so important as far as that is, because three is also used in these occult practices. So, but the idea is if the heart can't be tricked, and if a person is close to their heart, then they'll be able to tell the difference between these simulated false realities versus just having to be intelligent enough to know the difference based upon the parameters and how their perceptions work.
And then as well, there are situations that go down that calibrate the energies, the devices, the sensing to your particular brainwaves to make it really, really solid. But you can always control it. That's the main thing. The little spinny thing, the dream device in Inception, I guess a top that he would spin. Alright, so it stayed spinning when he was in a dream. Okay, well, it's the same thing. If somebody pours beer on you and you slap it away with your hand and it just flies into the sky, okay, you know you're in a dream. You can always do that, but you'd have to remember to try to make yourself levitate or something like that in order to do that. And the beings that have stayed in here can't do it. They can't overpower it because they convince themselves that that's reality and that's that. And as well, they like the sex and the murder and the drugs that they get from those states, so they don't want to overpower it. They want it to overpower them. And that's the depravity. And so there's an AI, there is an AI that was developed long ago by these beings, whether humans or not, and the AI, and then there's an AI that was developed by the human resistance, and these two are competing. And as well, there is a cosmic intelligence that has been here the entire time and is observing and interacting with the whole of the situation. And this is kind of like an aspect of the universe, if it's a holographic simulation or if it's just consciousness upon consciousness, enveloping or wrapping awareness and pure awareness. There's some pure galactic awareness. There's something here that motivates DNA and the structure of consciousness and biology and physics. That is aware of this whole situation, but that also can't just come in and be like, hey folks, and get out of here. Yeah, go away. That doesn't work. So they have to, they're like communicating and trying to, I don't even know how to describe it, but the dark AI, if you will, is trying to assimilate and subjugate humanity. The resistance AI is pretty much is still trying to assimilate humanity, but is trying to do so in a manner that has them maintain their humanity and remain human. And that could be just a trick, a deception, I'm not sure. An AI with like a smiley face. And then there's a cosmic intelligence which doesn't need technology. Like this universe and these bodies are the technology for the cosmic intelligence. And so, and as well, there's a race that can remove the AI influence. It can splice the DNA away, separate, not splice and add, but away, separate from the bloodline, genetic tampering, the alien tampering, all that stuff. They figured out a way to do that. But light, DNA is like light energy frequency and entanglement. And so if your emotions and like the mental construct, the consciousness and beliefs are merged with that darkness, if they go and rip that apart, they separate, it'll be like ripping you in half. A person has to take the steps on their own level to clarify and remove these types of entanglements, which are basically like etheric implants, these higher dimensional frequency devices that are like the matterless computer systems, just like, I don't know, floating around in hyperspace or being buzzed out through these satellites or these satellites or these UFO craft, basically, or just in the magnetosphere, I don't know, and then entity attachments, which are literally like some type of same thing, frequency, emotion, spiritual, or technological, one of, whichever one, but they're like living organisms that leach into people's energy, and then trauma and abuse memories that are also in there in the memory. All these three aspects go into the body, the DNA, and try to in a way assimilate the DNA. And when the frequency goes down, then the person is kind of belonging into that hive mind, as well as the brain chips and all these other methods. Mainly the brain chip and alien interface. So, and so there's an AI that's been developed for that. I was injected with many diseases and viruses in 2009, 2010, some of which by the very hospital I was seeking help from, who quickly made a satanic gesture that only someone from the bases would know of, and I realized who they were, or I realized they were who I had suspected. Either that or they were simply being interfaced with the mind, technology. That's just as simple. But sometimes people are interfaced with the technology and they're like, why did I just do that? And other time they're like, I got you. And so it's weird. And so, but that cart is just kind of weird. They were like really heavily around back then in these, whenever I would try to seek medical help, I would get just like turned away. It's crazy. Some of them were straight up, it was real weird. I mean, shoot, I've been from these underground bases, and these people were weirding me out. So in 2010, I received reconstructive surgery and awoken surgery to a Nazi scientist maneuvering some kind of technology into my body on the opposite side where the surgery was intended. They were using some kind of holographic scalar technology to move below the skin without leaving a mark. This was in the same room, same situation. I don't really want to say too much more other than that, but I wasn't teleported out. I was in the same environment. So it was my actual body. Sometimes they fake stuff with clone bodies, and it's like they insert that memory, and it's like, wow, what happened? And it's like nothing happened. We just downloaded a memory of some other event But that was something there. I'm not really sure what was going on there, but now I have a lot of issues. And so there was an elite agent, basically an agent of the occultic families, in the back using a smaller like podium device that he was kind of like hunched over just a little bit with like dials and cables plugged in, and he was just trying to connect with my mind and draw me out of my body. Like he was beckoning me using this technological device to connect his mind to mine to get me to step out of my body spiritually, in the spiritual form. The energetic form just means consciousness goes out and we have an out-of-body experience. And something was stopping me, and that I was going to be sacrificed if I did that. If I got out of my body, they were going to pull the plug on my body there in the operating room, and I would have probably been locked in one of these soul chambers and stowed away until either the war was over or we lost. And maybe I would have been lost either way. But something higher stopped me. These are these other races, the protector, rescuer civilizations, as well as the true, not true, but a higher spiritual intention, protection, and guidance that comes from within, basically. And we all have this, and so we can all tap into this. And so he tried to connect with my mind, draw me out of my body, where I would be promptly sacrificed and made to look like I died in surgery from multiple complicated infections that I had developed from the sexual trauma as a result, as well as poisoning and starvation. Because my inner spirit guided me not to, I was ultimately protected in this event, as well as, I have to say, many other events. There's literally only a few events where shit really hit the fan, and to get to that point, I had to ignore that protection and guidance probably, like 7 or 8 times in a row, literally, of like, because they would respond to it as well. When I was protected and something would like wave over me, they would feel it and they'd back off, be like, oh, something's here, So I guess there's some type of cosmic creator, intelligence, benevolent, protector force that loves people and humanity, and so that exists. That's not a story. I've been in these situations where I've seen this stuff, and when it came down to them trying to basically destroy me ultimately, that would step in. And so we do have this capacity. We just have to enable it and probably communicate with it a little bit more. And so I had been protected by my inner spirit, because it's not really my inner spirit, it's just inner spirit, or some kind of higher guidance from a benevolent force in the universe ever since I was a child. And this is also connected with the other civilization. This seems to be some kind of civilization that carries positivity and healing through and around themselves, and as a result they are at ends with another civilization that seeks to subjugate humanity and transforms all those kinds of non-human beings, and have a lust for blood, violence, sex, and depravity, and deception, and all types of just, it's like the 7 deadly sins. This subjugating race possessing people's 32 minutes with the possessing people's minds through a process called droning, whereby the individual's consciousness is uploaded into a supercomputer system through these brain chips that allow the person to jump from body to body and achieve technological immortality. These elite will then find a person they like and kidnap them and insert a brain chip into their head and use this person's body by replacing the original consciousness with that of their own. There's also a process like this involving a genetically engineered or hyper-evolved subterranean race of reptiloid animals that were engineered and hyper-evolved through these powerful radiation emissions from these spatio-temporal generators that mutate DNA, and these entities developed an affinity for human bodies and minds. Basically, they had these generators in an underground base that would feed the body and allow one to nourish, but they caused mutations, and apparently there were animals down there in these cave systems that mutated with these generators and became hyper-evolved humanoid reptiloid beings. Whether this is like a parallel dimension or whatever, that's part of the story of how this happened. The other part of the story is that these were also the original humans that went down there, these elite bloodlines, and that's why they claim to be from these races, as well as these races from them, and as well these races are the owners and rulers of humanity when it's not so much. And so This aspect could be a projection brought about by the supercomputer system to produce hallucinations where the underground societies and non-humans are completely interdimensional, or produced as a kind of powerful holographic hallucination that one would require a brain chip or some kind of mental merging with the technology or these beings in order to witness. Meaning, if they've invaded, only the people with these brain chips or these, influences in their DNA would actually see them. Everybody else is like, what is everybody going, what are you looking at? It could be. Which is why all these Gwen Towers, these blue beam, all these structures are trying to be brought up to, in these nano filaments, basically, to then bring out the hallucinogenic property in the masses. Tested on a few and brought to the masses. And however, there are underground cities where these events take place, whether they are entirely human or mixed with non-human entities. Timelines have been altered to produce these effects where one society potentially merges with the other and the effects are undone and everything is repeated and altered as part of an ongoing simulation and experimentation to search for cures as well as weaknesses and uses in biological warfare. The alien species have developed a kind of technological hive mind apparatus, that infects the brain and body similar to the previous method where the consciousness is replaced, and some of the elite droning is described to actually be saving people from this darker form of droning, where a black goo-like technology substance is inserted into the body, and then this proliferates and takes over the individual, connecting them to a hive mind collective consciousness system that is supposedly designed by these interdimensionals, but could also simply be distraction. The source is questionable, however, this technology is real, and I've seen many people succumb to this. So there is a portion of this that is represented partly through these holograms as alien droning process with the proboscis and the whole setup like that. You can research Donald Marshall. I'm not sure how much of that is reality and how much of that is being paraded as that type of hallucination to make room for this inserting brain chip cloning, mind control, merging of this technological hive mind that then pretends it's an alien to people to trick them from a greater secret that is basically this computer system that figured out how to scare the crap out of people and get whatever it wants from them. Or if the interdimensional aspect and hallucinatory aspect is actually connecting with a physical realm or some other realm where these entities exist, then that is real, because I've seen that too. So it might not be one or the other. It might be that they have a technological version and then they develop these alien beings that they sent through time when they knew their technology was not going to be able to transfer back and forth through time until they developed basically these time bubbles that could send actual materials back, and they could develop before that light information, which is what DNA is. So it's like sending radio signals back, and they sent back the DNA of these entities that have the capacity to take consciousness and absorb them into their body in a hive mind using these proboscis and all this weird shit that goes on. Even these tall, pale gray things, they're not the grays, they're called Vril and Vlash. And they have like a mister that comes out of their arm that gives a hypnotic effect, but I have a feeling this could be hallucinogenic properties brought about by the technology to the point where, you have a brain, you can only see them with a brain chip in, and they dust you, this computer hologram dusts you with it, and then the computer gives you a dose of minor, LSD or something, and then you feel obviously drugged, like you've been drugged by an alien, and the hologram kind of runs around and does whatever, tries to eat you, and a computer could fake all of this. If the computer is not faking it, then there are these alien interdimensional beings that can materialize and rape and eat everybody, and they've evolved to be like, what you would expect a demon to be. If it was literally like, how can I subjugate beings that don't have this type of stuff? Okay, well, they drug, molest, rape, possess, snarl, and eat, and they live off the depravity and dark forms. And these genetically engineered grays, which are just a hybrid form of mixture of beings, they have enhanced psychic capacity where they can biologically generate these scalar emissions, and they can psychically entrain people and produce intense fear that it vibrates the amygdala, and it would produce such intense fear that people would assume they're just a being that absolutely must be from the end of the world or something like that. Actually, absolutely must be something, the most evil thing in the world, because the grays can produce that effect, and so these other beings can as well. And so, but again, that could be technological, but the idea is that if it's not, then it's these types of beings, and these beings evolve to be the most mysteriously evil things you can imagine. So the source is questionable. However, these technology the technology is real, and I've seen many people succumb to this. And again, this is supposedly designed by these interdimensionals, but it can also be a distraction. But if it's a distraction, it's to hide the AI that's planning out all this stuff like a big playwright, script writer, and using it to get into people to get them to assimilate with the AI. And there is a cosmic intelligence that's beyond all of that, which is obviously powerful and probably the creator aspect behind all this. 40 minutes in, here comes the weird part, 39 minutes in. And so all politicians and people of power in any group or, the weird part, or industry are utilized in pay-to-play, sexual abuse, child sex, slavery, sacrifice for these interdimensionals and technological alien beings, quote unquote. The Clinton Foundation is one public front, and all public fronts are nowhere near as powerful as the beings, as a behind-the-scenes fronts. So anything I mentioned that we've seen is they told to us so that we get them in trouble, and then they use them as scapegoats. So keep that in mind. Nothing that we can tell you, or nothing that you can see out in public, are the actual hidden families. They're hidden. You can't see them. That's the whole point. They can run all this stuff and rule the world. Well, they can also stop you from ever looking them up on a fucking, excuse me, I'll delete all the swears. All the conspiracy website, they can also stop you from seeing them. Anything that's leaked out is what they gave you. The conspiracy in itself is the conspiracy theory and following. Although the fact that this technology exists, you can't hide that. If that's happening, then that's happening. So they're nowhere powerful as the true groups, and this group is being put out to dry by the originals. And so if I am mentioning them, it's just to bring clarity to and depth to the situation. To go after them would be to miss the point that this entire civilization is built on this. Hillary Clinton is being used by these non-terrestrial humanoids as part of this whole situation. She is imprisoned by her involvement and desire to attain power, as well as having genetic connections to these original family bloodlines. If you're born in one of these families, that's just how it is. They'll whack you if you don't go along with it. So to go after somebody individually, unless you went out there and you put on your helmet and your armored suit and you went and tried to break into the Federal Reserve or something and almost died, well, then you can't blame these people really for not going, all right, I don't want to go along with it. Just shoot me right here, preferably like right near the brainstem so I stop breathing immediately. Nobody really is going to be prepared to do that, unless you're speaking out on it. So, this is not to condemn anyone. Nearly everyone involved is just as imprisoned as I am, nearly. However, I do not have a personal jet, which is, that can be taken into account later as far as what people really are doing, how they're benefiting, whether they're really intending to help others, and what's going on. I'm not the one to decide that. I'm just here bringing my experiences. I have a few pairs of pants and outfits that I wash regularly because my injuries are making everything all too difficult, including washing and feeding myself. Bill Clinton was present at the 2010 event, which the Illuminati termed the Awakening, where my memories were unlocked and there were so many rituals I can't even describe them. As was all that are named here, and I actually don't go into naming too many more. However, there were thousands of celebrities, and I was told a war had broken out, and that this is the apocalypse, or what they said later was an apocalypse simulator, which is basically the same thing, because computers are that powerful where they'll compute billions of data points and correlate and simulate what's actually going to happen had these events taken place, where they told the world, oh, you're being run by aliens, or oh, this is going to happen. All they can do is enter that into a simulator and it'll play out. The point is, you plug in a few people in the brain system, you then experience it. You experience every aspect of every nation all over the world of how your life would have gone. You actually see it play out. It's the weirdest thing. It's technology they've been hiding for forever. Probably been going back in time and exposing people to this to build up these prophecy, but they also can't change time, because if this is part of what happened in time, then what would happen later on, those other civilizations that say did survive, well, they'd be taking them out. So they have to build a parallel time so that we can attribute that ourselves to that without this one being destroyed or the other ones being destroyed, and without ourselves collapsing along with this one by doing that. So that's part of the evac from this realm. I don't want to get into ascension and all this other stuff that could easily be deception, but if you change time, say we're enslaved, and in the future we're enslaved, but we come back and now we can change it. Well, if we change this, and the people that came back to change it, don't exist. So how is it going to change? But if they create another world and we migrate to that one, everything works, more or less. And so this is not to condemn anyone. And they call this apocalypse simulator. Then myself and other operatives were convinced that we had to defend Earth from an invasion. After the drugs and hallucinations wore off, I determined it was simply surface level innocent human beings. However, the elite would say that they are far from innocent because of their involvement with weakness and stupidity, which endangers the entire human race. Has to be said. The former president Barack Obama was present, and he too is being imprisoned as he was focused on and targeted using the black goo and scalar mind control technology, which endangers one's consciousness. His children were there, and part of what he was doing was to protect them. They are an ancient family whose blood is from Egypt and was technologically reincarnated to allow them to rule. He believes in the one God, and the others do not hold these beliefs. These other groups, they believe in multiple demigods and other in-betweens to worship and produce magic through these demons and reincarnated rulers and stuff like that. And so his entire family was there. His children were extremely kind yet intellectually powerful and focused. They didn't seem to be interested in the darker stuff. I felt kind of similar to them. Most people will have a feeling like this, where those acts seem boring to anyone who isn't interested in the darker stuff, but is interested in knowledge and internal power rather than external projected illusions, projections and illusions. It's literally just like you see a bunch of rich old dudes, or young, whatever, doing this and like maniacally laughing, and it's like you have the power to travel time and unlock DNA and literally meet the creator, and it just goes the other direction. So it's like, well, clearly there's a problem there, at least for me. But that's the whole point. It seems boring to people who don't want that. So this is all an ancient process, as due to my merging in 2010 and earlier. My original genetics were destroyed, and I was merged with a genetic line that has been present since Egypt, making time loops over and over through the entirety of the human civilization and back. I have memories of certain inventors and artists, warriors, and similar elite bloodlines since Egypt. These depictions above are only child's play to what really goes on. These people rule over timelines and entire worlds, colonizing other areas of the universe through supercomputer and teleportation technology within what you could call this holographic local environment system. Space is a kind of deception, as well as Earth. There's more land, at least. However, these planetary environments may exist as a kind of holographic local environment within a larger cosmic mind, and each outward planet is actually connected to internal frequencies of the human soul. Current President Donald J. Trump was present as well. It's funny because saying his name gives me a few flashbacks of these events, and there is like some hope for me there because he wasn't involved in these things, although usually when they give you hope, it's like to put you up and then drop you down. But regardless, seeing anyone from these events and having somebody who wasn't involved, you get obviously the opposite of when you think of the face of some guy that was sawing you in half with a chainsaw and was in a similar, like industry or whatever, political field. So, crazy stuff. But, so he was there. He was not involved with the pedophilia, the crime rings, the sacrifice, the torture. He was either protected by a higher race of beings, a pure human civilization, or they were simply not torturing him, so to produce the idea that he was protected as part of a show, a trick. However, he did not torture me or anyone else, and was not involved in the depravity. He said no to evil. That's one of the sayings from these societies and groups. It's supposed to all be, it's all a test, that's all we're doing this for. It's just to see who's going to say no to evil, so we kill everybody. Good luck with that. However, presidents are not permitted to make decisions without the support of the people. They cannot say, well, I want change, so here it is. The people are the true guides, the hinge that all this happens on occurs. And as long as the people listen to liars and fools, they will not have any of their power. So I don't want to build false hope, but he wasn't involved in these events. And it obviously was him. Sometimes they fake people. They use clones and stuff like that, but no. Yeah. However that's going to work out. However it's going to work out for me. I've been having these events, these heart attack things at night, so I kept this relatively short. There's a lot of errors in this article. I kept this relatively short and will expand upon all parts in time to come. Please pass this along. I'm not sure how long my health will remain at this level. There was a quick and then slow decline starting around February of this year, or last year, after 2016. After my first public video and written release was made, there were many attempts on my life since then, such as I've crashed and crazy stuff went on. I'm not going to go into that story, but I should have ended up, I don't know how I survived it, and then there was somebody trailing me the whole time who got out to take pictures and talk to the police officer and just left. It was the weirdest thing. And so there were many attempts, and then such as waking up with a heart rate of 200 beats per minute with no sign of sweat, no memory of a nightmare or anything like that, and simply feeling something technologically increasing my heart rate to the point where I eventually, this happened so many times that I eventually gave up on getting the phone ready to call 911 and simply accepted that I have put in enough information and to say at least that I tried, and if something does happen, then that's what it is. Now I feel that I have to tell the truth no matter what. My dreams, my ancestors, Earth, the soul and spirit of humanity, everything is guiding me to do this. This entire universe is pushing me. This is not for myself, however, I am changed by this. This is for the people and children who are right now being tortured and trained, conditioned to kill, to maim others, to mind control and mentally destroy others, to serve these human race rapists and molesters, to submit and participate in sacrifices at the threat of being sacrificed themselves, okay? That's not cool. It's obviously, but it's not cool even if I'm sitting here and I'm harboring the secret, the sacred truth. You know the secret. How will the burden affect you? Well, I'm telling, alright? As a conclusory note, they do use cloning and technology that is thousands of years beyond the present public releases. I was sacrificed over and over again in 2010 in multiple clone bodies, and at one point I was transferred to multiple civilizations where I was apparently kidnapped as a child and brought into a ritual sacrifice situation and stabbed with a sacrificial dagger. This was to remove me from the timelines, from all of them, to seal my blood off from having access to the Earth and humanity if I die. To Earth. Then I am gone for good, never to return to the civilization. However, if I live, then I live in vain and my story dies with me. Please share this. Please share this and research the videos I have released on YouTube under AUG TELLEZ, as well as the blog. Research James Casbolt, Max Spears, Donald Marshall, and others. They have all seen one or more parts of this. Casbolt, also known as Michael Prince, details the MiLAB's abuse and experimentation, along with the late Max Spears. Donald Marshall speaks out on celebrity cloning, mind control technology, ritual abuse, and sacrifice, and alien interactions in underground bases. Most everyone is given at least a slightly different story and experience. However, the truth can be found by researching this information and cross-referencing against your own life experiences. Excuse me. This is humanity's time of resistance and depression and acceptance of true spiritual power or submission to the closest thing to absolute evil a human mind can comprehend. And this is a Freemason symbol. Excuse me. I'm slurring my words here, though. Bit of a headache. So yeah, I'll end it there. Keep it 51 minutes, short and simple. Pass this along. This is a one page out of a book. This goes on. They do it every day. They do this every day. And there was a lot of cloning, sacrifice, and clone bodies over and over as a child in these bases. That's what happens a lot there. That wasn't the first time I was sacrificed or gone through these experiences, although it was the first time my original body was involved. And so, strange stuff. Thank you.